I say this all the time to people. A podcast is not a mythical thing that's going to make you successful. Just because you start a podcast and podcasts are trending does not mean you are going to have a successful podcast. I would look at your history, and that would help me predict whether or not you're going to be a successful podcaster, because your behavior, your mindset, your principles, your philosophy, that all carries over from the past to the present. Podcast Growth Nation, today for episode number 196, how you do everything is how you'll do podcasting. This is going to be a philosophical episode, and here's why. We were in the Next Level Podcast Accelerator last night. It was the last call, and somebody said, honestly, I just keep getting in my own way. I just keep getting in my own way when it comes to success and when it comes to the podcast. And I said, well, why? And they said, because I've never been successful at almost anything I did. And I said, have you ever done anything the way you're doing podcasting? And they said, hell no, not even close. That is what we're talking about. So many people, when I'm talking to them about podcasting, I'll say this. I might be, I don't know, I've heard a lot of people say this, I might be one of the only podcast coaches / production people that doesn't think everybody should have a podcast. I don't think everybody should. I think that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. I think somebody who is willing to be consistent, somebody who is super committed, somebody who has a long-term perspective, and somebody who wants to generally and genuinely give value to an audience probably makes for a good podcast host, right? But there are businesses out there that they want to take the shortcut. They think podcasting is a shortcut. They want to do it. They will not be successful. How you do everything is most likely how you're going to do podcasting. So if you're somebody who wants to take shortcuts, I don't think you're going to be that successful. I just don't think you're going to be that successful in the long run, right? You might have peaks and valleys, but what led to a lack of success in the past for you? That, if you're doing the same freaking strategy, is going to lead to a lack of success here. Just like if you are somebody who found success in something and you're able to systemize that and break it down and figure out how and why that happened, you can probably replicate that. We were talking on Next Level University. Actually, no, we were talking in the group coaching program, and Alan said, I really think it would be a good perspective for you to share how you've lasted as long as you have in this weird, wonky journey. And I said, I think so much of my grit and my ability to do this is based on my bodybuilding past. I did a bodybuilding show. That was one of the hardest things I've ever done. That was so much commitment and so much consistency, to a detriment for sure. But that taught me. How did I do the bodybuilding show? I was all in to a detriment. I literally would weigh out my food, and if I had a couple extra grains of rice, I would put them back in the bag. I cheated on my diet once, and I texted my coach immediately and told him because I felt like shit about it. I don't want to half-ass it. I want to do it. Right? If I'm going to do it, I want to do it. I might do it to a detriment. I might do it to an absolute detriment. That is my history. Maybe podcasting is the same, right? We do a show every day. We do an episode every day. That's a lot. That is a lot with everything else going on. But how I do everything, how I've done other things in the past is the way I'm doing this. Obsessively to a degree, right? Obsessively to a degree. Same for you. Same for you. So here's where it gets challenging / scary to talk about. If you're somebody who feels like you've never succeeded at anything, it doesn't mean you can't succeed at podcasting. It means you probably will not succeed with the same strategy. If you're somebody who has succeeded at everything you've ever done, make sure you understand what the strategy was, what the system was, why you actually got success. Because that's really, really important. There are some people out there that I'm thinking of that maybe they got lucky in certain aspects of life. I think I did to some degree. A lot of the opportunities I got just seemed to fall in front of me. Now, is that accurate? I don't know. Right place, right time, right attitude. You have to have the attitude, right? But you can't count on that. You can't replicate that. You can't build a business or a brand on that. You can't build a living on that. That's a challenging thing. So this is why I think the whole self-awareness thing is so important, and nobody really talks about it. But like that is the difference maker. The difference maker in this is it doesn't matter if you have the best titles, the best thumbnails, the best guests. It doesn't matter if you have the best mic, the best camera. That doesn't matter if you have a history of not being successful due to lack of appropriate strategy. Just like on the opposite front, it doesn't really matter if you don't have a nice camera, if you don't have a great mic, if in the past you've been successful at most of the things you've done because you just kind of have the system. My wife and I had a really cool conversation last night before bed about this. I said, "Do you believe that success is a science?" And she said, "I don't think it's a science. I think that's too certain." And I said, "Okay, do you believe there is a system when it comes to success?" And she said, "Yeah, for sure." And that really is what we're talking about. So I don't want this episode to be, hey, look, if you feel like you're a loser and you've never been successful at anything, don't bother. Please, I'm not saying that. That was me in a nutshell. I felt like I could not find a way to win for most of my life. I could not. It just did not seem like I could find a way to get ahead. I was worried about how I was going to pay this bill and what the next job was going to be. I was riding the struggle bus for sure. But if we do zoom out, okay, I'll do this for me just because I know myself. I don't know you well enough to do it for you, but let's all do this together. If I zoom out and then I zoom back into things that I was successful at, why was I successful at baseball? Because I tried to figure out what my skills were and then how I could use those skills differently than maybe other people would. So I was the person who would dive and jump over the catcher, and I was very reckless. I never got hurt badly, luckily, but like I did front flips over the catcher and stuff like that because that was my unique skill set. I was fast, I was quick, I was shifty. And I was a very good hitter, and I was good at baseball. But I wasn't as good as some people. But maybe I could make up for my lack of skill with other things. Okay? That, all right? I got a very good job through the fact that I was willing to show up and I was humble and I had work ethic and I had a positive attitude. I got most of my jobs because I had positive attitude. It was not because I had a positive resume. Okay, what does that mean? How does that lead to things? That's something worth zooming in for all of us. Okay? What have you done really well at in the past, and how do we figure out how to carry that over to podcasting, to coaching, to business ownership? And I don't think enough people talk about that because we're all looking for like the next thing. Like this is the strategy. This is the way to do it. This is the latest update. But you are the person putting all of that into effect. So everything you see is through your colored glasses versus mine. That is something that I think we all could do better at. We all could do better at that. The other thing for me, one of my jobs required a ton of travel, and it just became normal. It became normal to drive an hour to the shop, load a van for an hour, drive 6 hours straight to a job site, change into my work clothes at the job site, then work an 8-hour day, and then go to the gym after. That was just normal. That was just a normal Monday. And then Friday was the opposite. Wake up, go to the job site, work an 8-hour day, drive 6 hours home, drive to the gym, drive 6 hours to the shop, drive another half hour to the gym, and then work out at 2 o'clock in the morning. That was just a normal Friday. I'm not saying it was healthy, but that is carried over to tomorrow. Well, I'm recording this on Wednesday. Thursdays for me are usually 4 a.m. until 7 p.m. days. I wake up at 4, I'm at the gym at 4:30, I drive an hour to a client's headquarters, I work there until they come in at like 9. I'm either with them or on job sites until like 3 or 4. I go back to the hotel and then I work from 4 to 7. And then I go to sleep. I don't think I'd be able to do that if I didn't have that past experience. I don't think I would be able to do that. So for you, what is that lesson? What is that trend line? What does that look like? Where do you have skills that you have developed in the past that you are not leveraging when it comes to this? Or Where do you have weaknesses that you unfortunately are leaning on and leveraging when it comes to this? That is something that I've had the privilege of studying so many people at this point. And I can't say that I can predict success. I think that's arrogant. I do think there are very clear indicators. There's somebody that I'm thinking about in my past, and I went on this person's podcast. This is before I was even doing like podcast coaching. This was back in the day, maybe 2019, 2020. At the very beginning of me coaching people. And this person they were just wildly inconsistent with their podcast. And as I got to know them, and let me preface, I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm not saying this is a wrong way to live. I'm not saying that. So I just want to preface it. But we connect and I'd say, how's the podcast going? And they say, I've been inconsistent. It hasn't felt right. I haven't felt called to do episodes. It's like, okay, that's your prerogative. But as I got closer and closer to this person, I realized that they kind of just live their life that way. When they don't feel good, they don't do it. When they don't feel called, they don't do it. When they don't feel pulled, they don't do it. When they don't have momentum, they don't feel like doing it. I would not bet on that person to be successful. And I'm not saying that as a judgment. I'm not saying that this person's not a bad person. This person's a great person, great heart. But I wouldn't bet on them to be successful because they're carrying over their principles of life to their principles of podcasting or business or whatever, right? Who would you bet on to be successful? The person that is obsessed with knowing everything about something and they do it regardless of their feelings to a detriment, or the opposite. I would bet on the first person. I'm not saying they're going to be fulfilled and I'm not saying it's sustainable, but I would bet on them to get a level of success because it carries over. The skills that you have acquired throughout your life or the weaknesses that you have leaned on throughout your life will show through in most endeavors that you practice, podcasting being one of them. And I think this is why you see so many people start a show, they get 7 episodes in, and that's it. Because they wanted to feel good doing it, and the second it stopped feeling good, they were not interested anymore. They weren't interested. And that's why I'm sure that crosses over to almost everything. I think there's something, I don't know the exact stat, so please do not yell at me if I get it wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's like 50% of real estate agents don't do more than 2 deals a year or something like that. So if you think about it, almost every other real estate agent you see is doing like less than 2 deals a year and most likely not making enough money to live. So it's not like their real thing, their full-time thing. It's probably like that in almost every industry. How many people in car sales actually sell more than X amount of vehicles? How many businesses actually stay around for more than a couple of years? Right? Obviously that's a little bit longer term, but you can see the trend line because that is unfortunately the trend line of human behavior for most of us. We start something, it gets hard, and then we stop it. Or we feel really good about it, we start it, and then we do too much, and then we stop. Or we don't have enough data to actually start it constructively. All of that is just human behavior. So I guess maybe that's this episode in a nutshell. Who you are as a human is going to carry over to every single thing that you do. And I'm talking more from like a behavior principle perspective. If you are somebody who constantly looks for shortcuts, a podcast is not a shortcut. It will make your life harder and more meaningful, but harder. If you're somebody who believes in short-term success or you're designing life for short-term success, podcasting is most likely not going to reward you. And even if it does, you might not be able to handle the crash that comes after it. But if you're somebody who understands long-term and believes in investing in themselves and believes in getting a little bit better every day, and you have some sort of background in that, or you're adopting a new background, or a new principle, I guess would be a better phrase, that is the people that win. And I think that's why we see a lot of successful people and we don't like them, because they are like, There is a stereotype for success often. Not always. But like, if I was to say to you, give me a movie character who is super successful that you hate. First one that pops to my mind is Cal from Titanic. Very successful. That might not be the best use case because I'm pretty sure he inherited about a bunch of his money, but he's a dick. He is just not a nice person. He's arrogant. He's unkind. He doesn't really care about people's feelings. He's very unempathetic. A lot of people, I think, would paint that picture. Like, that's what I think of when I think of success. Just like if I said, hey, describe to me somebody who is in sales. You might say, oh, they're sleazy, blah, 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 right? Because there are stereotypes of these things. So I want you to figure out what your unique success traits are based on your past and based on the ones that you can now adopt, for lack of better phrasing. I think a lot of the skills that we have are skills that we've developed over time, and now we just understand how to utilize them in a new specific place. I think I've kind of always been a people person, so that's not something, I didn't learn that in a book. I think I've always kind of been that, and now I know how to leverage it differently, or I have the opportunity to talk to more people, or whatever it is. Every time I go golfing, I make a new friend. That's just kind of who I am. So that's a skill that I've developed over time. So I think it's this constant evolution of what am I good at that I need to leverage more? What am I not good at that I need to practice? And it's always those two things. And it's figuring out what your unique version of that is. I'm not telling you should be like me. You probably shouldn't. I don't think it would be healthy unless you're obsessed with podcasting like I am, right? But what are your unique skills that you already have that you're not leveraging? What are the weaknesses that have brought you lack of success in the past? How do we get better at one and better at eliminating two? That is the takeaway in today's episode. No industry updates, none of that. This is a behavioral understanding that podcasting is nothing special in terms of the opportunity to be successful. YouTube is nothing special. Vlogging and blogging is nothing special. Coaching is nothing. None of that is special. Those are just mechanisms. It's just a mechanism. It does not guarantee anything, right? It doesn't. And that's the thing, is we are carrying around these skill sets. So if you know somebody who just like wins at everything, they just have a system that is better for success, right? My business partner, Alan's a great example. I mean, he wins at everything. It's not by luck though. He understands the system of how to do it. That was not my thing. So if you've met somebody who wins at everything, sure, maybe they inherited a bunch of stuff or whatever, right? There's definitely that. But maybe they just have they have their finger on the pulse of the system better. And there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't make them bad. It doesn't make you bad. It just means there's opportunity there. And there is. I have a deep belief that there is an opportunity for all of us to get a little bit better, to leverage the skills that we've already developed, to leverage new skills and grow them. But it is a practice every single day. And that's why I'm so big on personal development and self-improvement. And I just think at the end of the day, we are all, going back to the beginning of this episode, we are all getting in our own way. All of us. It just, in what way? And how do we get out of our own way? How do we do that? Because it's possible. I do believe it's possible for all of us. All right, cool. All right, if you need help with anything we talked about today, I know we talked about a bunch of random shit. I'll have my link below in the show notes for a free 30-minute podcast breakthrough session, and we can jam on any of this. Whatever pops up, we can jam on. I think there's a gap when it comes to like the mindset of this stuff. I do think that. I really, really, really do. Because I know I wouldn't be as quote unquote successful without the mindset piece. Again, there's a lot of industry updates and this thing, yes, but with the wrong mindset, none of that matters. It just doesn't matter. So if you need help with that, I'll have my link below for a free 30-minute podcast breakthrough session. Always, always, always reach out to me on whatever platform you're on. I will respond. All right, cool. As always, keep on crushing it, keep on podcasting, and I will talk to you all next week.